We're going to make up some time, walk you through the application service, just basically show you what you need to do, give you a little insight, things that might help you today. But what I'd like to do also before we get started is to do a quick fire and find out what questions you might have so that I can be sure to address them today. So do any of you have any specific questions, particularly those of you that have looked around the application already? Okay, so the question is, if you're applying to multiple schools, can you submit a different personal essay to each school and program? And the answer is yes, you can. You can submit a tailored personal essay, and we will talk about that, and I'll show you how you can do that. Okay, any other questions about applying? No? Okay, well, I will get through the basic information, so I will take questions at the end. Oops. Okay. All right, so this is the SOPHAS homepage. There's a lot of good information on this site. As you can see on the left-hand side, there is a link where you can actually see the participating schools and programs. Currently, we have 60 schools, CFA-accredited schools and programs that are participating in SOPHAS, so you do have lots and lots of options. And those schools and programs each have anywhere from 5 to hundreds of options. So you're going to have a lot of research to do. So it's important before you get too far in the application process and before you do get too close to your deadlines, you want to be sure which programs and which schools you want to apply for. Okay. So if you click through the list of participating institutions, you can actually see the list here. And then if you click on any of these schools and programs, you can see some basic information about each of those programs. So we give you the definition of what the deadline means to them. We give you information about their schedule, some deadline information. So this is a good place to start, but I can't emphasize enough that during the application process, you should definitely visit the websites of these schools and these programs. Talk to their admissions offices. There's only so much information we can give you through SOPHAS, but you're going to also learn a lot directly through them. So this page for each of the participating schools and programs will give you an overview of some of the information, particularly regarding the admissions processes of these schools and programs. But if you really want to find out what it's like to study there, what kind of research are their faculty doing, what are their strengths, you know, what programs are they known for, then the best thing to do is to contact these schools and programs, and you can find all their contact information on their website. So for those of you that are pursuing a graduate degree in public health, have you decided what you want to study? Okay, what are you thinking of doing? Nutrition? Okay. All right, anybody else? Not sure yet? Sorry? Epidemiology. Okay. So schools and programs of public health are pretty complex. There's lots and lots of different things you can study in public health. There are 5 core areas in public health: epidemiology, biostatistics, health policy management, environmental health, and behavioral sciences and health education. But beyond that, there are also many, many areas of study in public health. Each school and program has to offer curriculum, the 5 core, but they also offer many other types of degrees. A lot of schools and programs offer degrees in global health, for example, and public health law, and informatics, and nutrition, and maternal and child health. So you're going to have quite a bit to decide what you want to study. The school and program is going to want to hear from you what particular track you're going to be interested in. Besides that, the schools and programs offer many, many degrees. They offer M.B.As, which is the Master in Public Health. They offer the Master of Science. They offer Master of Health Administration. There's probably 10 at least master's degrees at schools of public health. They don't all offer them, but across the schools and programs, there's lots of options. There are doctoral degrees. There are non-degree degrees. There's certificate programs. There's dual degrees. So many options. So we have a search Our schools and programs that participate in SOPHAS can enter all of their academic offerings into a database, and then you can search on it. They tag it by program area, they tag it by level of degree, whether it's doctoral or master's degree. They also can indicate whether it's part of a dual degree program, whether they have a Peace Corps program that goes along with it. So a lot of things you can do in this particular search, but this should be a good help to you if you are sort of have an idea of what you want to study, you just don't know where you want to study, so you can use this page to explore the schools and programs and figure out where you might want to apply. And this slide shows some of the results that you would get from the search. And you would just get a long list of all the schools and programs that match your criteria. Okay. And you can see that we do provide narrative descriptions of the programs that they wrote themselves, give you a little more information, and then once you find some that pique your interest, then again, contact the school or program, make sure that program's right for you, and then you can begin your application. Okay, so this should look familiar to a couple of you. This is the home page of the SOPHAS portal. So once you go to sophas.org and you click on Apply Now, then you will create an account in SOPHAS, and we will create a login for you. This is your main menu. This is where you are going to see, be able to enter all of your information, and most of these items that you see on this list, you will need to fill in each of these pages. Okay, so selecting your school or program. Again, you should have a really good idea where you want to apply to before you start your SOPHAS application. We don't recommend you go to this page, you get a drop down of the schools and programs, and then you make the decision here, because within this page you're not going to get a lot of information. You should have a pretty good idea what you want to do, and then this page is just the way you navigate to it. Okay. So once let's say you've decided you wanted to apply to a specific school, and in this case, I've got Mount Sinai as an example. As you can see, this shows that the applicant is interested in the MPH in biostatistics, but there's lots of different terms, start terms. So you will see many, many options. So you will have to do your research before you get to this page. So at the bottom of this screen, the applicant has selected Indiana University, and you can see that the Indiana University has additional questions for you. So many of the schools and programs collect a little additional information about you so that they can facilitate the application process. And you would need to answer those additional questions before you can move forward with your application. They're usually pretty short. They're typically no more than 15 additional questions. But if you apply to 3 schools, you might have to fill out 3 additional question pages for those specific schools and programs. References. So one of the more important things you'll need to do when applying is you will have to designate at least 3 references. The schools and programs do offer some general guidelines. How do you select those references? So typically, if you have not been out of school very long, the schools and programs do like to see academic references. Because you are applying to a graduate level degree, they want to know how you do academically. You might have former supervisors that could say great things about you, but because you are going to be in graduate school, it's a little less relevant than your professors. So they prefer, when you're shortly out of school, academic references. However, if you've been out of school for a number of years, then professional references become a little more relevant. And they, generally speaking, don't encourage personal references. There are some specific exceptions, which you will find on the websites of those schools, but typically those are not encouraged. So to submit a reference, you go to the reference section and you say add a reference, and it's pretty self-explanatory. You just need to fill out a little information about your references. You name how you know them, their contact information. You'd enter their email address. This is important to know. As soon as you hit save, your reference will get an email from SOPHAS. So SOPHAS can't take back that email, so make sure that you're comfortable submitting that person as a reference, because if you save that information and they get an email and then they respond, if that wasn't somebody you wanted as a reference, they're already in the system. So what we suggest is be sure those are the references you want to use, and even better, contact the reference beforehand. Let them know you're going to be using them as a reference. Make sure they're going to say positive things about you before you add them to the SOPHAS application. So writing a statement of purpose and objectives. So this is one of the most important things. To applying to a school of public health, all schools of public health and programs of public health do require that you submit a personal statement or a statement of purpose and objectives. So this can be about 2 pages if you wish, and this is really your chance to explain who you are and what you intend to do. This is your chance to shine on the application and really get them to understand where you're coming from, your background. We do collect a lot of bio and demographic information and academic history within the SOPHAS application, and I will show you a few screenshots of that. But what the schools and programs want to hear is about your passion for public health. What's motivating you? They want people in public health who have the academic rigor to make it through the public health program, but also have the passion to have a career in public health. So this is your opportunity to talk about why public health? What do you plan on doing? So we've got outlined here with the agreement of the schools and programs the things that you should address in your statement of purpose. And these would be your interest. Why public health? They would also like to know why that specific department or concentration. You know, what was it about epidemiology or nutrition that made you want to apply? And then, of course, why their school, why their program, what is it unique? So to answer these questions, you really need to do your research before you apply. And we do see applicants who have stellar academic records, but then their personal essay falls flat and they may not do well in the application process. The statement of purpose, I can't overstate it, is incredibly important. And then many of the schools and programs also want to hear about your career goals. So you want to get a degree in biostatistics, but then what do you want to do? That's really important to them to understand what your goals are. So give some thought to this. Interview people in public health if you're just not sure how to sit down and write this, and find out about their experiences, you know, and really do some thought about what is motivating you to apply to school of public health. And do share your personal essay with friends, with family, to get their feedback. You want this, once this personal essay is submitted, you can't take it back. So you want it to be in really good shape grammatically, but you also want it to really convey who you are. But just one note, the personal essay should be original. Some schools and programs actually check for plagiarism, so the best essay you can write is going to be the one that comes directly from you. And if any of you, are any of you interested in applying to a doctoral program, or are you all thinking master's level? Just master's? Okay. But if you do decide to apply for a doctoral degree, then schools and programs also will want to know specifically about your research topic, because you will need to do additional research at the end of your doctoral program. Okay, so submitting your statement of purpose and objectives. So as I mentioned earlier, your statement of purpose and objectives can and should be tailored for each school and program to which you apply, so that you can say, you know, to the UCLA program, the UCLA School of Public Health, this is why I want to apply to UCLA. And then you could also say to UC Berkeley, this is why I want to apply to UC Berkeley. So you absolutely should tailor that statement when possible. In fact, the schools and programs would encourage you to make sure that it fits their particular program. So you would create the statement within SOPHAS, and then you would save it uniquely. So if you were going to apply to UCLA and UC Berkeley, you would have one called UCLA and one called Berkeley, for example. And then you can upload that statement, and you can match it to the schools and programs to which you're applying. Okay. Okay, so as I mentioned, the schools and programs want to know about your academic history. They want to make sure that you've got the academic rigor to successfully pass the courses in a public health program. So you will need to share with them your coursework that you have taken. So you will actually need to report each and every course that you've ever taken as an undergraduate. And if you've taken any graduate level courses, you'll need to report those as well. So this is the most time-consuming part of the SOPHAS application. So what I suggest is that you order a student copy of your transcript, and well before the deadline, don't get into a crunch and try to get this done in a very short amount of time if you're up against a deadline. So get a student copy and start entering your coursework. You will need to go line by line and add every single course. If you do not, when SOPHAS receives your applications and they compare it to your original transcripts that you will send to SOPHAS, they will know if courses were omitted, and they will most likely rescind your application back to you and ask you to make corrections. So you'll end up doing it again anyways. So best to get it right the first time. And the reason why we ask you to submit your coursework is two reasons. We get lots of questions about this, but it turns out there's actually two reasons why. One is because the schools and programs can review your transcripts electronically in a very standardized format. It makes it much easier for the review committees to see your coursework when it's been entered into a standardized format. The other reason why is because SOPHAS calculates GPAs for you. They will calculate GPAs by subject area. They will calculate GPAs by graduate versus undergraduate, by university attended. So the schools and programs get these GPAs so they can start reviewing your application right away instead of having to take the time and calculate those GPAs themselves. They also have the ability to calculate on the fly GPAs, prerequisite GPAs, so this really gives them a tool that's important and facilitates the application process. So in theory, your application should be reviewed a little more quickly than it would be if we didn't have this process with SOPHAS. Okay. And here you would list all the colleges and universities attended. So every college and university that you've ever attended, even if you've just taken one class, yes, you need to list it. Particularly if it does have transfer credits. SOPHAS will notice if you listed a transfer credits on your original transcripts, but you didn't list it within your application, they will send your application back and say, hey, I think you forgot a college or university, it's on your transcript. So you'll need to go back and add that too. So if you took a summer course, AP courses, if you did a summer abroad program, you will need to list all that within SOPHAS. Okay. And academic history, many of the schools and programs do require that you take a standardized test. Most of them will accept the GRE. Many of them require the GRE. However, it is not uncommon for a school or program to accept another standardized test if you have one. So for example, if you're also applying to medical school and you've taken the MCATs, some of those schools and programs will accept the MCATs. Not all will. Some will say, no, I need you to go back and take the GRE. So you can find out which tests are required by each school and program if you go to our search, the program search that I showed you earlier. It actually shows the test requirements. If you see GRE and MCAT, it does not mean you have to take both. It means you can take one or the other. If you have not yet taken the GRE, but you have it scheduled, then you can actually show that the test is planned. You can give a planned test date. And then when you take the GRE, you will designate the schools and programs to which you're going to apply. And then ETS will actually send your GRE scores directly to SOPHAS so that the school and program will have your scores. So do not worry. If you've not taken the GRE yet, just make sure that you've taken it about the time that the deadlines are coming up, okay? Because the schools and programs could very well be ready to start reviewing your application. If they require the GRE, they can't do that if you haven't taken the GRE. Other relevant information. This is probably the most underused section of the application, but this is your opportunity to explain a little more about your application. So for example, let's say you had a family crisis your sophomore year, and that is reflected on your grades. You didn't have such a great sophomore year, but freshman year you did well, and junior and senior year you pulled it together and you did really well. Then you could explain here, use this section to explain, you know, something happened in my family, this is why my grades weren't so great my sophomore year, for example. Anything else you think is important for them to note, but doesn't belong in your personal your essay, because that's more about you and your goals and your aspirations. This, I think, is a very handy place to make comments about your application, and the schools and programs definitely take a look at this as well. So the SOPHAS application fee, it's $120 to apply to the first school or program. Some schools and programs will allow you to make multiple selections, so you can apply to the like the MS in biostats and the MPH in epidemiology at that school. Each school and program has their own rules, but many will allow you to apply to multiple designations, and a lot of times it's because they know you don't know exactly what you want to do. You haven't started attending school yet, so they do give you some options. In those cases, it would still be the same application fee. The $120 is for the first institution to which you apply. Then after that, it's $45 for every additional school and program to which you apply. So if you apply to, let's see if I can do math, 3 schools and programs, if you apply to UCLA, San Diego State, and Berkeley, it'd be $210. However, we also have a series of fee waivers programs that you need to know about. So they are first come, first serve. We do run out of fee waivers by the end of the application cycle. We just launched the application, this year's application cycle at the beginning of September. So this is a good time to think if you want to apply for a fee waiver. Because by the time we get to the end of, I don't know, maybe early spring, we could be out of fee waivers. So definitely don't wait if you want to apply for a fee waiver. We offer fee waivers for U.S. students who can demonstrate financial need, and our definition is in the prior year, their reported income was less than 200% of the U.S. poverty level. International applicants who come from low-income countries, according to the United Nations, we will offer free designations to those applicants as well. And if any of you are McNair Scholars, Gates Millennium Scholars, are part of AmeriCorps, participate in Leadership Alliance, or you're probably not in Country Peace Corps because you're here, but if you were, you'd also be eligible to, for fee waivers for our SOPHAS designations as well. All right, when to apply. So this graph shows when we get applications. And so as you can see on the far right, September 30th, not a whole lot's going on. The blue line is applications started. Those are accounts people have started and are starting to enter information. The red line underneath shows applications that have been submitted. So as you can see from the get-go, as soon as we open SOPHAS, that overnight we get about 4,000 applications started, but we don't get many submitted. Most deadlines tend to start for fall admissions, tend to start December 1st, and then they go all the way through the next spring. So we haven't hit any major deadlines yet. Therefore, most people have not yet submitted their application. But once we get to December 1st, it gets very, very busy at SOPHAS. And we get lots and lots of applications, and it's pretty exponential until late winter, early spring, and then it starts to taper off. So you need to know your deadlines. You can also find the deadlines on the program search that's on our website. But it's always a good idea to apply early. And the reason why is because many schools and programs of public health will start reviewing your application as soon as you have submitted your application. They don't wait to the deadline. They can review as soon as you submit, and they would prefer to do so. So it's a good idea because they will have a little more time to spend looking at your application, and you can get ahead of this great big crunch. You also will allow yourself a little time, if you apply before your deadlines, a little time to make corrections if there is a problem with your application. Let's say you did forget to list some coursework and the deadline has passed. You might be able to solve that problem and it won't have any bearing on the admissions process, but maybe it will, you know, just depending on how long it takes us to solve the problem. So earlier is always, always, always better. With SOPHAS, you can get ahead of that. It gives you much more flexibility. By the way, you can always submit your application before your references have responded. That is not a problem. In fact, we prefer you do so. And your GRE scores also do not have to have been submitted by ETS. So submit your application as soon as you have done everything that you need to do the application. When documents come in, that should not slow you down. So submit as early as you can. So you've submitted your application, good for you, very exciting. But you can't just walk away. You've got to check the status of your application, because if SOPHAS has noticed something going on with your application and they need you to make some changes to your application, they've emailed you and they've sent you messages within SOPHAS, they've sent messages to your personal email account and you haven't responded, there's nothing more that they can do, and your application might just sit in the SOPHAS system. So make sure that you are actively looking at the status of your application. So on the left, you can actually see, have your transcripts showed up, your original transcripts? Have your references submitted your recommendation? Have your test scores been received? You can see all this in real time, so you can make sure everything's on track, and if something's missing, then you can actually take action and try to get that moving along. And as you can see, we've also got links so you can follow along the status of your application on your mobile phone as well. Okay, and then once the schools and programs make a decision about your application, they will be in touch with you directly. You will not get the decision from SOPHAS. You will receive a notification from the school or program. They will mail you a packet, they will email you. They have lots of different ways they like to handle the admissions decisions. But again, if your deadline has passed and you have a general idea of when they're going to be doing their admissions, then certainly be in touch if you haven't heard anything from them. But they will reach out to you directly when they do have your decision. So if you are interested in learning more, in addition to attending the fair today, and certainly checking the websites, contacting the schools and programs directly, we have a number of other opportunities that will give you more information about schools and programs. One that we really enjoy is 4 times a year we have a virtual fair. So you can actually meet online with up to 60 schools and programs. So the next virtual fair is on November 12th and 13th. So you'll create a username and password. You'll log in. You can see information about the schools and programs that are participating. You can read their brochures, you can look at links to videos that they might have posted. They'll have a lot of helpful information. And then during these 2 days, they will have chat rooms. So you can actually chat with the faculty, the admissions directors, so you can get your specific questions answered too. And I will also be in the SOPHAS booth, so if you have more questions about SOPHAS, you can certainly ask them as well. But it's a really fun, dynamic way to get information and to find out the various options for schools and programs. As I said, I know that a couple of you have started to think about applying, and you might have a good idea of where you want to apply, but there's so many options. I mean, there's 60 participating in SOPHAS, so maybe you'll find one that you hadn't considered before, and the virtual fair is a really good one to explore a little more and see what other options you might have. Okay, so that is the highlight of applying through SOPHAS. So I'd love to take questions and see if I could give you all any more information that might be helpful. Okay. How do you apply through the fee waivers? Good question. So if you go into SOPHAS, you've actually created your username and a password. You log in, there's FAQs. There's also instructions. They actually take you to the same place. So there is a section on fees, and then within the fee section, there are instructions for each of the fee waivers. So in most cases, you just need to click on a form that we have for you, and you fill out the form. You fax or email it to the SOPHAS staff. They will review it, and then they will get back to you. The only thing you should be aware of is that you do have 30 days to use your fee waiver. Okay, so if you're going to use a fee waiver, make sure you don't sit on it for too long. Otherwise, they will release it and give it to somebody else. But it's a pretty straightforward process, and you should hear back, I would say, fairly quickly. Okay.
So my question is in regards to that also.
Okay.
When applications due December 1st, the next is like January 30th, and you still get a fee waiver, you reapply for a fee waiver?
No, because it's per applicant, so you'd get one free designation as an applicant, and so you're still you. So you can't, it's for you, not for your designations. Yeah, it's only for one. It's a limit, one fee waiver per person per year. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, other questions? You guys are ready to apply? Okay.
The GPA calculator, because I'm a transfer student to UC Davis, so they don't calculate my GPA anymore from community college, so it really doesn't exist anymore in regards to my cumulative GPA. So how would that work with SOPHAS?
So SOPHAS doesn't look at the GPAs that have been calculated by the colleges that you've attended. So if the UC Davis policy is not to include the community college, that would not be reflected on the SOPHAS application. SOPHAS actually takes all your individual coursework and calculates a GPA for you. So did you receive, the question was if you, how are different GPAs calculated versus SOPHAS GPAs? So for your community college credit, did you actually receive grades?
Yes.
Okay, so SOPHAS would take your community college grades and your UC Davis grades and calculate a whole new GPA for you, which would be an undergraduate. And it would also look at, let's say you took math classes in both places, you would have a cumulative math GPA as well. So it doesn't try to follow the various rules at each college and university. It just calculates its own. Okay. It is, yeah. It's to create uniformity, because every college and university is so different the way they look at GPAs. So SOPHAS just doesn't worry about their policies, and just it's purely in terms of your coursework, and that's how it does it. Okay. All right. Other questions? Yes.
Some schools require CV, right?
A CV. Yes. Yes. So the question was, some schools and programs require a CV. Yes, you actually need to upload either a CV or a resume through SOPHAS. So it doesn't have to be a CV per se, just depending on where you are in your career and what you have to list. So if you just have a resume that really captures, your volunteer work, your honors, any work experience you might have in your education, then you could absolutely submit a resume instead. But yeah, that is a required element. And new to SOPHAS this year, we also have a writing sample that is optional, but the instructions are pretty clear. It's generally for students applying to doctoral programs. And so make sure before you submit a writing sample that your school or program actually requires it, because most of them, especially if you're requiring a master's degree, most will not. So just make sure you look at the instructions and then double check what your schools and programs are requiring. Mm-hmm. That's really up to you. We used to not have the 4 things that we think you should address, but every school and program had a slightly nuanced instructions. And we found that that was really tough because some were pretty close together, but not quite, and it was a little confusing to figure out what's the difference. So we actually met with the schools and programs to say, what if we ask everybody to address these 4 questions? Because they have the elements that everybody wants. But I've not heard that any school or program has a specific format. You just want to convey those 4 ideas. So, yeah, they can overlap. So, be as creative as you want, how you convey those things. As long as you really touch on each of those points. Yeah. Okay. Another question.
Are there specific areas in the application you recommend we start first?
Yes. So you want to start with the items that may take longer because they're not in your control. You can't help it if the college that you might have attended in the past doesn't send your transcript right away, right? That's beyond your control. So the farther ahead you can get on that one and do that, take care of that first, the more time it's going to allow you to follow up on it. References, I think, would be another one. If your professor is not responding and you're emailing them and saying, please, can you please respond? I really need this so I can apply. If you've submitted that or created that reference early in the application process, then that'll give you a little time to try to do some follow-up if you need it. The course, so I would say those 2. So create your colleges and universities attended. You will actually see an icon where you can print an original transcript request form. You mail that to your colleges and universities. Then they will print your original transcript and they will send it with that sheet back to SOPHAS. And the SOPHAS can match your transcript with your application. So if you do that and submit your references early, that's probably the 2 things where you really want to start. The coursework tends to take a while to fill in. It could take a couple hours, just depending on how many courses you take. Put on some good tunes and just get through it. You can also stop and start. You can do a little and walk away and do a little more. But as long as you have your student transcripts in front of you, you should be able to do that, in an afternoon. And then certainly writing your personal essay, you don't have to upload it till the end because it's very simple. But do give that some thought because, again, that's one of the most important elements in your application. And sometimes is the hardest thing to do, to think of a way to really convey who you are. That might take a little while. So that's one you should start thinking about early. Okay. Okay.
What if your professor forgets about the deadline?
What if your professor forgets about the reference deadline? So it's okay. SOPHAS requires you to submit 3 references, but your application is considered complete once 2 have responded, partly because these things happen. And most schools, if they really want you as an applicant and they're very interested in you, then most likely they would still continue to review your application, but they may not be able to make you an offer until that reference has responded. So I wouldn't go into a panic if you have a January 15th deadline and a reference has not responded. Do not panic. But by the time the schools are up and running and reviewing and making admissions decisions, you need to have that reference in. But on that date, you still got some time to get it in. So the schools will have your application as soon as you submit. The schools can see everything about your application, and then more information is continually added to it. So that if that last reference filing comes in, it'll show up in your application when it's finally submitted. Okay, so I think we are out of time. All right, well, thank you, everybody. I'm actually going to go do the same thing on the back side of the building, so if you have any other questions, I'll be around for a few minutes. Okay, thank you and good luck.